Hello and welcome to this special edition of Arirang News. I'm Peunji. It's 2:45 a.m. Friday, September 20th here in Seoul, bringing you details of the summit between the leaders of South Korea and the Czech Republic. That took place about an hour ago. Now we're just moments away from taking you to the joint press conference between the two presidents. But before that, to offer us some insights on what to expect, we have Mason Ritchie, Professor of International Politics at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies, joining us in the studio. Professor Ritchie, thank you so much for your time today.
Great, thanks for having me.
So this is the first time in 9 years that a South Korean president is visiting the Czech Republic. Now, this visit is particularly significant as a Korean company has been selected as the preferred bidder to build 2 nuclear power units there. But there are some legal concerns to be overcome. Can you briefly tell us why this nuclear plant deal is so important and how these issues will likely be resolved?
Sure. Yeah, so KEPCO, so the Korea Electric Power Company subsidiary, KHNP, Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, has been selected by the Czech Republic as the preferred bidder for 2 new reactors at the Dukovany nuclear power station. They beat out EDF, so Électricité de France, and also Westinghouse, a major U.S. nuclear power plant supplier for this deal, which is worth a lot of money. So in the first place, it's a big deal because it's a big deal, $17.4 billion for the project currently. And let's face it, these construction projects generally go a little bit over budget, so it's probably even going to be more than that. This would be South Korea's second nuclear power plant export after the 4 units that it constructed in the United Arab Emirates. It was awarded that Baraka power plant in 2009, and just this month, actually, in September of 2024, Unit 4 there has come online. And so the idea really that the Yoon administration has is to make South Korea into a nuclear power export leader, including looking at possibly continuing exports to the UK, possibly to Finland, possibly to Netherlands. There's an ongoing project that's getting started in Romania for tritium removal at the Chernovada power station there. And so, South Korea wants to be all along the line of nuclear power technology, including nuclear fuel, small modular reactors, plant decommissioning, waste removal. The problem, at least with this Czech power plant, is that Westinghouse has filed a couple of lawsuits against KHNP because it argues that the APR 1000 reactor that KHNP would build at the Dukovany site is based on intellectual property from Westinghouse, and that unless Westinghouse gives its approval, there's no export license that legally KHNP could give or could provide in order to send that technology somewhere else and to construct a power plant based on that. From talking with experts on this, my understanding is that this is likely to be resolved, and that Westinghouse has already lost one of these lawsuits. They have another one pending, and that ultimately what Westinghouse is trying to do is trying to leverage this lawsuit in order to get a large financial compensation from KHNP. So I think that probably this is going to get worked out, but these types of legal issues can be quite complex. They can drive up the cost, and there's always some uncertainty built into it. So it's a big deal for South Korea, not only because of the deal itself, but also because of the larger strategic implications it has for South Korea's export of nuclear technology going forward.
Right, and security is another key issue. And President Yoon earlier said he will explore joint responses with Czech leaders to address North Korea's nuclear threats. Will security issues be part of the agenda?
Yeah, so the Czech Republic does have an Indo-Pacific strategy, even though it's a landlocked country in Central Europe. So it does have an interest here in East Asia. As an EU member, the Czech Republic is also highly concerned with nuclear nonproliferation, which of course North Korea threatens with its own nuclear weapons development. The Czech Republic is a NATO member, and South Korea is connected to NATO through being a part of the Asia-Pacific Four, the group of South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as having its own individually tailored partner program with NATO. So there is some overlap of interest there. That being said, the Czech Republic has a relatively limited bandwidth for what it can offer in terms of security here in East Asia. I think that this is much more about being on the same page and showing a sort of combined posture for defending the international rules-based order than it is about real operational security and defense cooperation between South Korea and the Czech Republic.
Right, and this summit comes as the two countries mark 35 years of diplomatic relations. What other topics might be on the agenda?
Yeah, so this really looks a lot to me like this is a business trip as much as anything else. And in the first place, obviously, that's because of the reactor deal. And in some sense, Yoon is going there as the sort of national brand spokesman for nuclear South Korea. And his job is to go there and close the deal. Of course, it's already in some sense been closed in the sense that KHNP has already been selected as the preferred bidder. But as we sometimes say in diplomacy, nothing is decided until everything is decided. And of course, these last potential legal hurdles with Westinghouse, even though the Czech Republic has largely said that for the moment they remain unconcerned by this, puts just enough doubt in it that it seems like it's a good idea for Yoon to go there and really push forward, giving his guarantee, so to speak, that this is going to be solved and that the Czech Republic won't be left in the lurch with a nuclear project that it has to restart in terms of the bidding process. So this is really a lot about business, notably in the nuclear sector. There's some other issues that are in the business wheelhouse, so to speak. There's some technology cooperation issues that are going to be on the table, some investment connections and some investment cooperation between the Czech Republic and South Korea. There's going to be a business forum that Yoon is going to attend, and of course all of this is being supported by a very large business delegation of South Korean industry leaders who are going along with the president and his team. So a lot of this is about business, although of course it's wrapped in the larger issues of diplomacy and state-to-state relations.
All right, and South Korea seeks to export 10 nuclear power plants by 2030. And do you think we can expect South Korea to export more nuclear reactors to other European countries?
So the short answer to that question is yes, probably. And we already know that there is interest both on the part of South Korea and potentially some other European countries in this area. So one of the places that we see this potentially taking place is in Wales, where KHNP is bidding on a nuclear construction project there. There has been some talk, about something similar taking place in Finland. In the Netherlands, where there have been some feasibility studies in both of those countries about the KHNP reactors. Possibly also Sweden, at least as of 2023. I haven't followed that one so much as I have some of the other ones. So in terms of reactor construction, which is sort of the big fish in this world, it seems like there are some signs that South Korea has some not only interest, but also some probability of perhaps picking up some of these projects, either by themselves or in a consortium, perhaps with another manufacturer or exporter. South Korea has a reputation for a pretty good outcome in terms of cost effectiveness. For instance, one of the reasons why EDF didn't succeed in getting the power plant in the Czech Republic is that EDF, Electricité de Défense, has a pretty poor record on cost overruns for these large ticket reactor projects and coming in way after the deadline for construction completion. South Korea has a pretty good reputation for cost effectiveness, for on-time delivery, and for the technology, of course, that it has. I mean, at the end of the day, the reactors have to, have cutting-edge technology, and also for nuclear safety. In addition to that, South Korea is, in this sort of larger frame of things, also trying to work on nuclear. Nuclear safety technology, such as robots that can go into places and perform in reactors and perform, hopefully not, but emergency related tasks, or even in some cases routine maintenance tasks. South Korea has put quite a bit of emphasis on helping to develop small modular reactors rather than these large bespoke $15 and $20 billion projects. These are smaller modular reactors that are cheaper, and they're in the process of going through technological development and licensing. We'll see how that works out. That's still developing, but South Korea has put a lot of effort into that. South Korean nuclear industry is working on decommissioning technology, so taking old nuclear reactor and old nuclear power plants offline. That includes also waste removal issues. I mentioned earlier South Korea is working in Romania to do tritium removal at the Sierra Nevada power station. That's about a $200 million project. So there's this kind of ecosystem, let's say, of nuclear-related technologies where South Korea is either already a leader or is developing some advantages in that area and building up this ecosystem. It's doing that, of course, in many cases primarily for the business side of things. Also, there's a thought process, essentially where this plays into climate change goals, insofar as nuclear reactors are a source of non-carbon electricity production. I think, in addition to the highly competitive nature of these types of projects, where you have the U.S. as a player, Japan, historically as a player, Korea, France, China, Russia, big ones, of course. These are highly competitive projects because they're big ticket projects that cost billions and billions of dollars, and there's a life cycle that comes after it. So there's obviously no guarantee you're going to win this project, these types of projects in Europe or anywhere else for that matter. But in addition to that competitiveness, there's a second issue, I think, a second risk factor, and that is what's going to happen in the 2027 presidential election here. The Moon administration, which preceded the Yoon administration, instituted a nuclear phase-out policy, where they were going to, slowly and over time, close down the nuclear reactors here in South Korea and replace them with green renewables, offshore wind, solar power, other forms of green renewable energy. And the Yoon administration came in and reversed that. And this type of pendulum swinging back and forth is a risk for the ability of South Korea to engage in these types of large, big-ticket nuclear reactor sales overseas, because there is, as I mentioned, a sort of ecosystem that goes along with it. You need to have the human capital to be able to develop these systems over a long time. Nuclear reactors are obviously highly technologically sophisticated, and they require from the architecture, design, engineering, safety, operational standpoint, a significant amount of human capital. And if you have a presidential administration come in 2027, where it looks like it might come in 2027, and if it's the Progressive Party that came in last time and they institute a nuclear phase-out policy, that's of course going to cause countries who might otherwise purchase these nuclear reactors from South Korea to think twice, because they won't be sure that in the future South Korea will be able to continue supporting those projects.
Right, and in terms of security issues, do you think President Yoon's visit would create an opportunity for South Korea to strengthen security ties with NATO countries and other European countries?
Yeah, obviously, diplomacy is 90% just being there. And so, the Yoon administration has put quite a bit of emphasis in its foreign policy and its security and defense policy on this idea of being a global pivotal state. And that means, not only going to Washington, D.C., and not only going to Tokyo, and not only dealing with China, but, also broadening the perspective where South Korea comports itself as a major player. And that includes, especially in Europe, as I mentioned, it belongs to the Asia-Pacific 4 grouping. In NATO, it has an individually tailored partnership, a global partner of NATO status. And it's important for South Korea to support that global pivotal state status through these types of visits, not just to the UK, not just to France, not just to Germany, but also smaller, in this case, countries, who are nonetheless important because, in NATO and in the European Union, the Czech Republic does have sway, it does have influence. Maybe not as much as in Berlin or Paris, but it does have influence. And so this sends a message to Central Europe, it sends a message to the EU, it sends a message to the United States, it sends a message to all of South Korea's partners, especially the ones who are invested in the liberal or the rules-based international order, that South Korea, is present, it's active, it's not just looking at North Korea, it's not just looking at Northeast Asia, it's busy making sure that its interests and those of its partners and allies abroad, are being advanced. So that's, I think, a sort of, for lack of a better term, a sort of marketing of global pivotal state South Korea. In addition to that, of course, there'll be some specific discussions about cybersecurity cooperation with NATO, non-proliferation, and how to combat the proliferation of North Korea, for instance. So clearly some security issues will be on the table.
Right. We'll have to see what the two presidents say in the joint press conference. And while we wait for the joint news conference to start, earlier today, President Yoon left for the Czech Republic seeking to enhance nuclear power cooperation. He will be focusing on closing the deal for a major nuclear power plant project in Dukovany. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
Seeking to help close a deal between Korea Hydro and nuclear power and the Czech Republic, President Yoon Suk-yeol embarked on a visit to the European country on Thursday. This trip comes as this past July, the Czech government chose Korea Hydro and nuclear power as the preferred bidder to build 2 nuclear power units in Dukovany, a project worth 24 trillion Korean won, or about 17.3 billion US dollars. However, there have been appeals against the Czech government's decision by the two sides also competing for the project, U.S. company Westinghouse and France's Électricité de France. Westinghouse claims the Korean company doesn't have the license to use a nuclear power tech owned by the U.S. firm, while EDF claims the selection process wasn't transparent. To this, President Yoon said in a written interview with Reuters published Thursday morning that, quote, there is no need to worry and that his confident any obstacles can be overcome. He added Seoul and Washington were creating an amicable atmosphere among businesses in the nuclear energy sector to close out the differences. As for the summit, the top office also said the trip will serve as a means to establish a nuclear power alliance between South Korea and the Czech Republic.
The President, during this official visit to the Czech Republic, will convey Team Korea's firm commitment to the successful completion of the nuclear power plant project and will actively engage in sales diplomacy as the nation's #1 salesman to secure the contract. A nuclear power alliance between South Korea and the Czech Republic is expected to be established through this visit.
The 4-day visit will start with an official welcoming ceremony in Prague and a summit with Czech President Petr Pavel, as well as an official banquet. On Friday, he will meet with Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala and travel to the city of Pilsen to visit nuclear power production companies. Coming back to Prague with the Prime Minister, Yoon will sign MOUs in fields including trade, investment, and advanced technology, signaling cooperation beyond the nuclear power sector. The Czech Republic is also known for its manufacturing capacities, especially in automobiles. More than 100 companies from South Korea are already operating in the country, and to enhance economic exchanges, the two nations are set to sign a trade and investment promotion framework during this trip. Meanwhile, Yoon will also be accompanied by a business delegation made up of officials from more than 50 South Korean companies, from conglomerates to small businesses. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
So it looks like the press briefing is about to start. We'll come back right afterward.
Návštěvy prezidenta Korejské republiky. O úvodní slovo požádám prezidenta České republiky pana Petra Pavla.
Dobrý večer, dámy a pánové. Vážený pane prezidente, vážení hosté, je mi ctí, že jsem mohl dnes na Pražském hradě poprvé
I am very
přivítat
pleased to
prezidenta
welcome
Korejské
President
republiky
Yoon
s jeho delegací.
here at this office, and his delegation. We're very delighted. For the last 12 months, we have met 3 times, and during the meetings, we have discussed about the bilateral relations between the 2 countries and the relations that are being carried out on a very high level, and we are also a reliable partner to each other, and we are partners with faith in each other. And from human exchanges to tourism, to economy, technology and science, and defense, all these fields are covered by our partnership. Together with the Republic of Korea, not only about the democracy, but also we stand hand in hand in terms of the standpoint related to international issues. And recently, the threat to global peace is the war in Ukraine and China and Iran. And those are of concerns. And we have 4 ministers and also delegation from the business sector, and therefore we have discussed about many different kinds of things that are overarching the different fields. The most important project will be the new nuclear power plant, Dukovany nuclear power plant cooperation. As we all know, the Republic of Korea and the KHNP was named as the preferred bidder, and the final contract is being discussed. And this bid is for the Czech industry. This is a significant turning point, and about 60% of Czech companies are expected to participate. And therefore, the technical capacity is very much needed. And the cooperation that we have had so far were in the high value-added industries, and we are looking into more ways to cooperate. So in a long-term view, the aerospace industry is also a very
povedou k opravdu významnému rozšíření spolupráce mezi našimi zeměmi.
It's a very it's an industry that we believe will have many possibilities, and we believe such cooperation will contribute to the economies of the 2 countries. And the Korean countries that are in Czech Republic, they are very well established and they are contributing to the advancement of the economy. And the expanded cooperation, if we sign the deal as a final, we believe that this will bring about more opportunities. And I would like to once again thank President Yoon and his delegation for his visit. And with his visit, it is very clear how important he thinks about such relations with Czech Republic. I would like to pass the mic to President Yoon. Hello. I would like to thank President Pavel for his warm hospitality. First of all, due to the storm Morris, the eastern part of Czech Republic were struck hard, and I would like to convey my condolences, and also would like to wish a fast recovery. Dear people of Czech Republic, it is a great pleasure that I make this official visit to the Czech Republic, one of our key allies in Europe, ahead of the 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Since establishing diplomatic relations in 1990, shortly after the fall of the Iron Curtain in Europe, the Republic of Korea and Czech Republic have developed mutually beneficial cooperation at a very rapid pace. Today, the Republic of Korea has become the fourth largest investor in the Czech Republic with a cumulative investment of 3 billion euros. The annual trade volume between the two countries has been reaching record highs for 4 consecutive years. As a manufacturing powerhouse and production hub in Europe, many excellent Korean companies have established themselves in the Czech Republic, contributing to the country's industrial development and economic growth, and the number of tourists traveling between the two countries is steadily increasing as well. World-renowned Czech writers, musicians, and artists are widely loved by Koreans, and Hallyu culture has become very popular in the Czech Republic. Today, President Pavel and I comprehensively review the status of our cooperation, which has made remarkable progress since the establishment of diplomatic ties. We also discussed in-depth ways to expand and develop our strategic partnership into an even more future-oriented and mutually beneficial relationship. First of all, our two leaders agreed that in the face of the growing global pulley crises and the threat of authoritarianism, the Republic of Korea and the Czech Republic, which share universal values of freedom, human rights, and the rule of law, should expand mutually beneficial cooperation and deepen our strategic partnership. To this end, the two countries agreed to comprehensively strengthen cooperation in various fields such as politics, economy, culture, science and technology, foreign affairs and security, national defense, and the defense industry. Next year, marking the 35th anniversary of the diplomatic relations and the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the strategic partnership. In particular, we agreed to expand strategic cooperation to foster advanced industries, secure energy security, and respond to climate crisis, starting with the construction of the new Dukovany nuclear power plant, which the KHNP was selected as the preferred bidder in July. I told the President that the new Dukovany nuclear power plant, which will be built by companies from both countries, will become a milestone for the joint development of the Korean and Czech economies and energy cooperation, and will be an important opportunity to strengthen the strategic partnership between the two countries. I also said that our government will pay very close attention and take careful care so that the remaining procedures leading up to the final contract signing next year can proceed seamlessly. In addition to nuclear power cooperation, the two countries agreed to explore specific cooperation plans in the fields of bio, digital, and transportation infrastructure. Through this, the two countries will go beyond cooperation centered on manufacturing and build a foundation for future joint growth based on advanced technology and applied science. During today's meeting, our two leaders exchanged extensive opinions on various global issues, including the North Korean nuclear issue, the situation in Northeast Asia, and situation in Ukraine. President Pavel and I agreed that the security of the Indo-Pacific region and the security of Europe are inextricably linked, and that the Republic of Korea and the Czech Republic, which share core values, are the best partners who can help each other on the international stage. In particular, we reaffirmed that North Korea has nothing to gain from reckless and irrational provocations that undermine peace and stability, and that illegal military cooperation between Russia and North Korea in violation of UN Security Council resolutions poses a grave threat to international peace and security. We agreed to closely cooperate, that the international community can send a firm and consistent message about these threats, and that UN Security Council sanctions against North Korea are thoroughly implemented. In addition, we agreed to work together to devise practical ways to help the Ukrainian people to regain peace in their daily lives based on strong solidarity and support for Ukraine. We agreed that the governments of both countries will actively support companies who wish to participate in Ukraine's sector-specific reconstruction projects so that they can pursue specific cooperation such as sharing business information, joint project development, and joint investment attraction. As a strong ally of the Czech Republic, the Republic of Korea will do its utmost to ensure that the matters discussed at today's summit are faithfully implemented in the future. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to President Pavel and the Czech government and the Czech people for the warm welcome they gave me and my delegation today. Thank you.
Děkuji za vaše slova a nyní je prostor pro jednu
Thank you very
otázku
much for
českých
those
médií a jednu
warm
otázku
words.
korejských médií.
We are going to accommodate to one question by Czech media and another one from Korean media. Hello, I'm from Czechco TV. About the new nuclear power plant is my question, and also the legal dispute between KHNP and Westinghouse Electric. The U.S. government, are there any talks that are ongoing between the government of the U.S. and Westinghouse Electric? And would this be a resolution in the form of the Westinghouse Electric taking a part of its responsibility? Was that a question to me? About the intellectual property issue, Korea and the U.S., the governments are talking on, and we are sharing a very firm consensus. And our government, we are supporting a very a smooth resolution. And just like UAE Baraka nuclear power plant, we believe that this issue would be resolved in an amicable manner.
Já pouze dodám, že samozřejmě dokud není podepsaná dohoda,
One thing I would like to add is that before the final contract, we don't have anything that is affirmed, but Czech Republic and the Republic of Korea and the dispute between the two countries, Republic of Korea and the United States, come to a settlement would be preferred. So I believe that the problem will be resolved in a successful way. Of course, we are looking at worst case scenarios, but I don't think the possibility is that high. Okay, we would cater to one question from the Korean media. Hello. I am Park Ji-won from Seoge Daily. I would like to ask question to President Yoon. When we have the final contract after 2009 in Baraka, this will be a export in 15 years and the first of its kind to a European country. What were the details in terms of your discussion with Pavel? And with UAE, the diplomatic ties have been strengthened after our exports. So what would that mean to the bilateral relations between the two countries, between Czech Republic? And to Pavel, President Pavel, I would like to send words of consolation about the recent storm. And what would be the final point for the Korean counterparts that they would have to consider about the final agreement? And in Korea, we are also having hopes high about additional export of nuclear power plants. So I would like to know your take on that. Korea.
35년 전에
35 years ago, when we tied diplomatic ties between the two countries, until today, we have been expanding economic ties. The Dukovany power plant agreement would go through its process, and if we get the contract at the end, this would be a turning point to bring the bilateral relations to another level. And about nuclear power plants, Czech Republic already is operating many different power plants. And when we first won the Baraka power plant, there were only 3 nuclear power plant engineers. But after 15 years, now they have 2,000 engineers. And moreover, this Dukovany power plant, when we have the contract and we start the construction, the design and construction and all these features will be done together with Czech Republic. And not only the development of this new technology, but also nurturing human capital will be the focal point of our cooperation. So in this regard, this will be a nuclear power plant ally that will be forged. And the two countries' strategic cooperation will go to another level. So such advanced industry and advanced technical cooperation will be expanded further.
Dovolte mi nejprve vám poděkovat za projevenou účast s
First of all, thank you very much for your warm words.
napáchaly záplavy v posledních dnech.
Victims and the harm, about the victims and the harm due to storms. The natural disasters bring about an imminent solidarity among the international community. About your question on nuclear power plant, we have a long history and we have great human resources and the research, and we have research capacity and capacity in mechanical engineering. So I believe that this is an important project for Czech Republic, because with renewable energy, it is not sufficient enough for us to utilize. And of course, if we focus on carbon neutral, it is inevitable that we look into the nuclear power plant. So we have many things that are prepared for the project. So depending on the progress of this project, there will be chances for additional projects. But at this point, I believe it is too premature to talk about any additional projects. However, when we have the final contract for Dukovany, we can think about additional contracts for other nuclear power plants. So it is not only Czech Republic, but also other countries nearby, like Slovakia. We believe that the potential for South Korea to go into other countries with the contract with us will have a good opportunity. We would like to end the press conference. Thank you.
Now that was our live coverage of the joint press conference by the presidents of South Korea and the Czech Republic following their summit to strengthen economic and security ties. So, Professor Ritchie, we just heard the two presidents say they addressed topics from the nuclear power plant deal in Dukovany to cooperation in fields such as security, technology, trade, and science. What were some key takeaways from the summit?
Yeah, so I mean, there was nothing particularly surprising about that. You know, they covered most of the things that you think that they might. I made a few notes. You know, obviously one of the main things they covered in some, for lack of a better term, detail. Not that anything in those types of press conferences is detailed, but about as detailed as presidents can get. Is of course the status of this nuclear power plant deal and the fact that both sides are on the same page in terms of where the finalization of the contract is. Both sides, of course, are on the same page in terms of their belief that the legal issues between KHNP and Westinghouse are going to be resolved. That's not a surprise. I think another thing that was not a surprise was that both leaders talked, as I mentioned in my remarks beforehand, about the similar values and the support that South Korea and the Czech Republic bring to the rules-based international order. So we heard President Pavel talk about democracy, issues of international order. We heard President Yoon talk about authoritarianism, values, rule of law. And of course, those kind of come together, again, not a surprise in the fact that both of the leaders talked about the security risks in their region and how they're connected with each other. In the case of President Pavel, talking about Ukraine, and in the case of President Yoon, talking about North Korea. And of course, they both, in some sense, are therefore also drawing attention to the fact that the security issues and the security risks in Europe are connected to those in the Asia-Pacific the reverse, and really the North Korea-Russia tie-up insofar as that connects to Ukraine is on the top of the list, right? You know, North Korea has been selling weapons to Russia, including ammunition and short-range ballistic missiles, which Russia then uses on the battlefield, or even worse, against civilian targets in Ukraine. You know, that's obviously terrible for Ukraine. It's terrible for all the European countries, including the Czech Republic, who are supporting Ukraine. Clearly, President Pavel considers that a concern and a risk, as well he should. And on the South Korean side, you know, North Korea is getting all kinds of support, whether it be financial or energy or food assistance, and probably also military technology assistance from Russia, which is a security risk to South Korea. So both leaders called attention, I think, to the way that these security risks are interconnected. I guess the last thing I would say is I thought it was kind of, you know, I won't say necessarily remarkable, but I think it's, you know, nice to hear that this is the third time that Yoon and President Pavel have met. I mean, again, that's South Korea being global pivotal state, and you know, it's not just in the, you know, the money-making sectors. You know, there's also this, you know, or in the defense and security issues. There's also some of the soft power connected with that. And President Yoon talked about Hallyu and the people-to-people and cultural connections between South Korea and the Czech Republic, and how, you know, many South Korean artists are also influenced by, you know, artists and culture in the Czech Republic. So I think they ticked off, you know, a lot of the economic, security, defense, but also culture and people-to-people boxes.
Right, we also heard President Yoon say the South Korean government will carefully manage the remaining procedures to ensure that the contract will be finalized next year. And like you mentioned, it's not a surprise, but how do you think this issue will play out?
So, you know, I'm not privy to where the ongoing lawsuit from Westinghouse against KHNP is. But I have had the opportunity over the last, you know, few weeks since a high-level Czech delegation came here to South Korea to work through some of these issues and find out where South Korea and KHNP were in terms of resolving the legal issues between the two nuclear reactor suppliers. And, you know, I've been told, you know, that essentially, you know, Westinghouse is just trying to wring as much money as they can out of the deal. You know, that you know, they are using the leverage that they have through the U.S. legal system because of the intellectual property right dispute with KHNP to essentially try to compel KHNP to settle that court case at as high a value as possible in terms of financial compensation for Westinghouse. And I think that's where you're going to end up. You know, there's some tail risks, you know, for Westinghouse that they might just lose, in which case they get very little out of the deal. There's also some tail risk that indeed, you know, a court in the U.S. may find for Westinghouse and complicate things enormously for KHNP's ability to get the license to export these reactors, because it ties in with the way that the U.S. government supports the way that South Korea acquires nuclear fuel for its own domestic power industry. So there are some tail risks there, but I think it's going to be settled primarily financially, and the question is how much. And I've actually heard reports and rumors, shall we say, maybe is a better word, that the amount of money may be significant enough that at the end of it, KHNP might walk away from this with a losing financial ledger out of this deal over the lifetime of it. We could be talking about some very significant financial compensation for Westinghouse. But as I said, this Dukovany deal is not just about the $17.4 billion deal itself. It's also about building this larger foundation for South Korean nuclear power exports to other countries as well. So it may be something where even if South Korea's KHNP ends up taking a loss on the deal because of what it has to pay to Westinghouse, it would still be willing to do that simply because of the other possibilities that it opens up.
Right. Professor Ritchie, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Now that wraps up this special edition of Arirang News. We'll have more highlights in our upcoming newscast at 9 a.m. Korea time.